Hello and welcome to all our viewers on CFO Insights. I am Shelly, a financial technology consultant at Hyperbots, and I'm very excited to have John Silverstein here with me, who is a seasoned finance executive with over 2 decades of experience in leadership roles with expertise across both Fortune 500 companies and high growth startups. Thank you so much for having us today, John. Today, we'll be talking about optimizing late payment decisions to incur penalties or not. And to start us off, what are the key considerations when deciding whether to incur a late payment penalty?
Yeah, so it's always complex, and you don't want to mess up your relationship or have relationship issues with your vendors. So I'd start out there is just to ensure that you're not impacting the business in a way that you can't do business anymore. So that's number one. And then late payments. Ideally, it depends on the business, the industry, and things like that, whether you incur them or have to pay them or things like that as well. So I'd make sure that you are with the standard or that you negotiate or try not to pay them in cases and have the right relationship with your vendors up front. So that's the key is that you can grow with your vendors. Your vendors need to be more like partners that you can grow and sell more items if you have the right financing and the right terms, and sometimes you need special terms for an agreement that might be larger or things like that. So the goal is obviously to avoid and reduce and make sure that you're not having increased money costs because of late payments and things like that. But there are times where you need to conserve cash and you need to reduce risk, or you might need to make covenants or things like that on your debt side if you have those as well. So you can also look at the other options that are out there that some of the vendors have for vendor financing type programs and things like that. You can look at your cash flow availability and try to change. Look at your cost of capital and revolvers and things like that that you might already have, or your actual structure of your company before you have to impact those relationships. The penalty cost is often lower or similar, and it depends on how long and how late you're going to pay and things, but could be lower than your return on your alternative investment or alternative funding. So you need to look out for that and try to stay on top of it from a relationship standpoint as well.
And how do these late payment penalties typically affect a company's cash flow and financial plan?
Yeah, so they're hard to predict if you're not doing it because typically you're not expecting in your AP and things, you're not putting it in accounts payable to pay late payments. So on your cash flow, it's generally they're just incremental cost of capital to you. So it's not ideal to have them. It's also, it's hard to remember, and often the systems don't tell you which ones are going to incur late payments or not incur and things, and it's harder to track because it's added on to the next invoice or to a statement and things like that, and then you end up wasting time too in negotiating or trying to figure out what the extra fees are or why things don't match between what the current statements are and bills. So it can have a significant impact on your cash flow by increasing unexpected expenses. You don't expect to pay late payments normally, I would say. Your cost of purchases goes up. So if your margin and your sale was actually at a specific margin, you just might have affected your sale by 2% on your margin as well. So that can cause bigger impacts. And also for future sales or future relationships, as I spoke to in the beginning, that can impact where they might make you prepay and you may not even have the option to have a late payment in the future if you're not on top of it. So it's critical that on a 2% on a large invoice, it can erode those savings, and your companies must plan to avoid these penalties as much as possible. Again, it's better to negotiate and make sure that you have the terms and predict and forecast your cash flow so you understand if you can actually complete within terms. And you can generally, vendors want to grow and they want the sale too. So it's not just you're in it together.
And when might it be strategically advantageous to delay payments and incur a penalty? And can you provide an example of the same?
Yeah, it might be strategically advantage to delay a payment if there's other things, or there might be a opportunity where it's impacting the cash, and it might be the penalty's lower than the opportunity of cost, or using the cash immediately, or you might be able maybe it would stop you from doing a different sale too if you had another sale in line. So maybe there's a negotiation if you can use the same vendor or increase volumes too. If a vendor charges like 0.3% monthly penalty, that's monthly, it's going to incur. So you have to watch that. And your cost of capital is 10%, delaying, you're better off. You could invest that cash at a higher return elsewhere. So you got to look at, again, the full picture of it, a strategic decision on whether conserving cash or to incur a small penalty is worthwhile or not.
What criteria should CFOs use to determine whether to pay on time or delay payment with a penalty?
CFOs, they should look at the cost of penalty versus investment return, and look at the pipeline sales relationship, the cash flow needs. Do you really need it? The risk of not having the cash or paying it out, the historical performance, and again, you try to avoid it. So if you're going to get a late penalty of 3% per month or something, that's 36%. You're not going to want to pay those high levels, most likely.
And how do companies typically structure their authority matrix for late payment decisions?
Most companies, they have a multi-tiered authority matrix, so the department managers might approve a minor deviation, while higher value items and things might need to go up to senior management, a CFO sign off, even CEO. So a centralized approach ensures that there's consistency, so it's not different, and the vendors and things know who to talk to and things like that as well.
And how can leveraging technology such as Hyperbots payments, AI Copilot improve the decision making process regarding late payments?
Hyperbots payment AI Copilot, it automates the tracking of these payment deadlines and also monitors the cash flow projections and things, so you can make that decision informed versus just looking at your bank account and being like, I don't know that I can or can't, or what's happening. So that's key, is the monitoring of what the impact was in the past, what the actual contract terms are as well. So it can simulate various scenarios to make sure that the penalty costs against the investment returns make sense for the finance team. If the AI detects delaying the payment would incur the 0.3% penalty, but free up cash for a high yield opportunity, it will flag this as a potential strategic move. And you can, again, if you see this information up front too, it allows you to have the conversation with the vendors earlier on too. So you might be able to avoid the payment to begin with.
And how do you balance maintaining vendor relationships with the strategic decision to delay payments?
Yeah, you want to make sure again that have that relationship with the vendor so you can make these decisions and ideally not incur any penalties, and talk about the approach and have those open conversations. So it's a collaborative approach with the vendor, because again, both companies want the sale end of the day. You should inform the vendors in advance if your delays are happening. You should have that relationship so you can do that. You can tell them the nature, or have that conversation to on where it is. You could change terms where you pay, and maybe change the terms going forward and things where it's a win-win for the vendor as well, because you're getting a sale that allows you to actually improve going forward. So being proactive, it allows you to manage and keep those relationships open, and you can then you'll be able to make these decisions going forward, and you won't be required to like prepay or other things, because just because you're making a vendor late payment or something like that, they could actually change your terms and your credit ratings as well. So you need to be very careful on doing that. Discuss just a short-term extension with reasons and things. Your vendor might also wants the long-term relationship, because you could take your business elsewhere as well. So it's strategic on both sides, and you need to be aware of it and all the facts.
Thank you so much for being here today, John. I always learn so much and have such insightful conversations when you're with us on CFO Insights.